Hello, my name is Molly, and I'm from the Big Sandy Community and Technical College in the Dental Hygiene program. And I'm here today to talk to you all about a new program that we've got involved with that's called Icanendthetrend. And it's all about giving you all information on how to end the vaping trend. Since February of 2019, we have spoken to 5,000 students across the state of Kentucky. We know that the use of e-cigarettes is an issue that has gained popularity among youth and that it's happening in your school. We are here to have a conversation with you about what we can do as students to end the trend. But before we talk about how we can make a change, it's important to learn how these products began and why they continue to be so popular despite some of the harmful consequences. History repeats itself. So let's talk about cigarettes. We know they're dangerous, harmful, and the leading cause of preventable death. Cigarettes became popular, and I'm sure you can all think of at least one adult in your life who still smokes cigarettes. Can you believe they were once thought of as not having any negative health effects? With over 50 years of research and seeing firsthand the severe health consequences, we know this was a huge misconception. This was what the people who made cigarettes wanted us to think. Don't you wish someone would have told the people you know about how dangerous smoking cigarettes is? Traditional cigarettes were first introduced centuries ago. However, moving into the 1900s, there was a reform in response to health concerns. In 1956, researchers found a causational relationship between cigarettes and lung cancer, which eventually led to advertising restrictions and regulations on smoking in public places. This brings us to present day, in 2000. More regulations were put in place to restrict big tobacco from targeting our age. Clearly, they still do. So, what is another name for something that is popular for a period of time? I'll give you a hint. It's in our program name. A trend. Cigarettes become something everyone was doing. But through the success we have had with education, policy, and advocacy, we continue to see commercial tobacco use decrease in popularity. We are so proud of this. But what's happening now? We're seeing a huge rise in e-cigarette usage. The same tactics that those cigarette companies used years ago are being repeated, which has contributed to the surge in e-cigarette use among people our age and younger. So let's talk more about trends. What are some examples of trends that have come and gone over the past couple of years? Maybe TikTok, scrunchies, fidget spinners, Instagram, Facebook. How do you think these silly things become so popular? Why do people participate in them? Do you think it's because of boredom, curiosity, because your friend offers it to you? What's the big difference here between these trends and recent trend of e-cigarette use? The key difference is that these trends didn't harm our health or future like e-cigarettes can. This trend has far larger consequences and will be much more difficult to fade away if we don't do something about it. If it seems like everyone else is doing something, it may be perceived as something that isn't bad for you. Unfortunately, e-cigarettes have become just this, something that we think everyone else is doing, or a trend. But it's important to note the majority of people our age are actually not using e-cigs and vaping, and we have an opportunity to reduce the rates even more. Some of these devices that are being used are the Juul disposables like Puff Bar, Mr. Fogg, NovoVuse, and Blue. It is important to be aware of all these vaping devices and know that they are electronic cigarettes and they almost always contain nicotine. These devices have changed over time and continue to change. To make e-cigarettes more appealing to people our age and to get around some of the recent policy loopholes, this change had to happen. No matter their shape, form, device name, or convenience of disposables, they're not a healthy alternative to traditional smoking. We are going to have a conversation about what exactly these trendy devices are and what we as student leaders can do to try to reverse the trend. First, we need to talk about the many short and long-term consequences. In order to make informed decisions, it's important to learn about the risks associated with the products. There are many misconceptions about these products that we will discuss. Then we analyze the goal of companies who make these products. Do you really think they have our best interest in mind? Advertisements and labeling may not tell you everything you need to know. Their job is to sell the product. And finally, we will talk about additional reasons why youth are using and how this trend has become an epidemic. Throughout the presentation, I challenge you to be thinking about how you can make a difference and help us in this trend. A lot of times, when we think about the health consequences of using tobacco, we think of long-term diseases that affect older people. However, there are many serious health problems associated with vaping that affect young people. When we think of short-term health consequences, we know this can affect our daily lives by irritation and cough, interrupted brain development, increased heart rate, and asthma flare-ups. And you know what else? Vaping can lead to an increase in cavities. Who wants to go to the dentist all the time? There have been several chemicals found in a variety of e-cigarettes that have been linked to health consequences, and it's scary to think there's so much we still do not know. Diacetyl has been known to cause popcorn lung. Formaldehyde is found in preservatives and glue that's been linked to cancer. It's also used to preserve body parts. Other chemicals we know include acrolein. Acrolein is commonly used to kill weeds and rodents and has been used by the military in poisonous gases. It can cause lung irritation as well as chemical burns to the lips and mouth. Benzene, found in car exhaust and plastics, affects your immune system. Cadmium is a carcinogenic found in batteries. Toxic heavy metals such as nickel, iron, lead, and zinc can be found in e-cigarettes. They can develop asthma from these chemicals. People who do not use and are more susceptible to asthma are being triggered, and some hospitalization just by breathing the aerosols emitted by their friends' vapes. Unfortunately, these chemicals have only been identified as of now, and the scary truth, outside of these chemicals, we actually don't know what is in these products. We also do not know the long-term health consequences of vaping, especially as these products are changing all the time. Because of this, we are essentially being used as guinea pigs. Not only are we harming ourselves, but we can unintentionally be harming others as well. How many of you heard that e-cigarettes produce just water vapor? There's a common misconception that you exhale water vapor when you take a hit on an e-cigarette. But that's not true. When heated, e-cigarettes produce an aerosol which contains many of the chemicals we've just discussed. It also contains microscopic or super small particles that are expelled into the air and are harmful to our health and people around us when we breathe them in. Even if we can't see them, it's similar to the secondhand smoke. Just like secondhand smoke, secondhand aerosol is also harmful to our health. If you're around someone who's using an e-cigarette, you are exposing yourself to harmful chemicals. And if you are using e-cigarettes, you are putting your friends, family, and even pets at risk. What's important to remember is that what's coming out of an e-cigarette may look different from secondhand smoke, but it's far from harmless. Contrary to what e-cigarette companies want you to believe, e-cigarettes almost always contain nicotine. And pod-based vapes and disposables always contain nicotine. Using nicotine in adolescence can harm the parts of the brain that control attention, mood, learning, and impulse control. Unfortunately, with a lack of regulation for these products, the concentration of nicotine can vary tremendously across the products. One puff bar, a disposable e-cigarette, has the nicotine equivalent of at least 20 cigarettes, and other brands, such as Mr. Fogg, can have as much as 3 packs of cigarettes. How many of you knew that young people are 4.5 times more likely to smoke cigarettes if they vape? Many people think that they'll just use an e-cigarette once in a social situation, but you cannot control how your body and brain reacts. That's why it's easier not to start in the first place. Sometimes when we see headlines and statistics, we don't always think of these things. As young people, we can feel invincible. We know that it's true, but we don't think that it can happen to us. Nicotine can be equally as addictive as heroin and has a very high dependence level. It only takes 10 seconds for nicotine to reach the brain, and each time you use, your body gets more used to it. So eventually, you keep wanting more, feeling like you're chained to needing your fix. A person's body relies on the substance, so quitting can cause painful side effects and cravings. This is exactly why people who use nicotine products, like people that you might know, often become dependent for a really long time if they don't get help quitting. Now that we've discussed health consequences, chemicals, and let's talk about some money. How much do you think someone your age spends each week on this trend? And how about for a full year? The answer is $1,598 per year on disposable e-cigarettes. So that's $133 a month. So let's break this math down. There are 300 hits per disposable. And on average, a person will take 132 puffs a day, which comes down to 146 disposables a year. Multiply that cost of a disposable, which is $10.95, and that total is $1,598. That's crazy. What would you buy with that money? There are so many other things we can buy, but sometimes when dependent on these products, it's hard to see how much money you're really spending. You could buy 26 pairs of Vans or 2 new iPhones, or you could even save that money for college. So now we've addressed the first big reasons that youth has started using. E-cigarettes, a lack of education related to tobacco and e-cigarettes. You have the knowledge you need to make decisions that are informed by facts. I know it's a lot of information, but it's something that's really important for you to know and understand so that you can say no to these products. The e-cigarette industry, which is part of the tobacco industry, tries to manipulate young people into using their products. Then it becomes a trend, and the cycle repeats itself, making it hard to reverse the addiction and consequences of using. Before we start, does anyone have any guesses about how the tobacco industry tries to make you guys think it's cool or a good thing to vape? A huge tactic companies are using to target youth are flavors. According to the Journal of the American Medical Association, 81% of youth who have ever tried any type of tobacco product started with a flavor product. There are more than 15,500 different flavors of e-juice and counting. Flavors mask the harshness of the chemicals, which makes it easier for people your age to take up the habit because you can't taste the actual chemicals of the liquid. Flavors aren't the only way that these companies like to manipulate us. They also make sure their products are accessible and in places that people like you can see them. Not only do they want us to see the product themselves, but they use advertising that people our age likely see and buy into. E-cigarette companies also spend a lot of money to advertise their products to reach our generation. Exactly how much money do you think they spend a year in advertising? The answer to that question is $110 million as of 2018. We also need to think about what these ads don't tell us. Nicotine causes irritability, mood swings, lack of focus. Does anyone notice the warning label? No, because it's extremely small and not there at all in some cases. That is on purpose. Most recently, some brands have decided to make their warnings more noticeable because they received so much backlash about how they made such important information look so insignificant. But it's still easy to ignore because of all the fun images and fruity flavors they promote. So raise your hand if you use Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, or others like Facebook or Twitter. We know social media is becoming more and more relevant, especially with people our age. So it makes sense for companies to also brand through social media. Have you seen anyone using or promoting e-cigarettes or vaping on social media? If so, where? Unfortunately, a lot of social media accounts post videos of young adults using these products while giving shout outs to many of the popular brands. Did you know tobacco companies have paid influencers, who are people among young people, to promote their products on social media sites like Instagram? The influencers are usually young, attractive, and have large social media followers. Often, they instruct the influencers not to use hashtags like #ad or #sponsored or the name of the brand to avoid being caught for influencing young people. The tobacco industry is taking advantage of the fact that you look up to these influencers. They are relying on you to make e-cigarettes look cool and fun. Big tobacco strategies target youth with their flavors, advertisements, and vulnerable age groups. We are vulnerable and sometimes have lack of knowledge, subject to peer pressure, and are still learning a lot about who we want to be. When a few people pick up something interesting, then others join in. Eventually, it seems like everyone is doing it. So how can we take all of this information and apply it? As leaders in your school and community, you know what it takes to make a positive change. There are a lot of really great resources available to assist young people who want to quit and friends who want to support them. And guess what? They work. So here's a few of these resources. This is Quitting and My Life, My Quit are designed with youth people in mind. In just 2 weeks, 61% of people who reduced e-cigarette use or quit completely. While it can be challenging and take time, especially for those who have been using for a while, we want you guys to know that you and others can quit. So please be part of the team and come and join us so that we can end the trend.